Oh, it's going to. Good afternoon and welcome to the August 27th, 2019 Public Works Committee meeting. And now it's time for a roll call and termination of quorum.
Armstrong here. Robert here. Stroman here. Modrick quorum is present.
Thank you very much. And now it's time for adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion by our council president, and we have a second by Mr. Stroman. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes. Now on to general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the city council members present. I don't see anything on non-consent. So I will close that and we will move on to consent items. Items 1 through 20. Do I have anyone on the council that wants to remove anything, items 1 through 20? No. Staff? Okay. Mr. Tech, you have the floor.
I just want to reflect that the items are 1 through 19 instead of 1 through 20.
Well, we will move to make it show that 1 through 20. It says on my sheet 1 through...
It'd be 1 through 19.
Or I mean 1 through 19.
Yes.
Mine says 1 through 20. So, if we don't have anybody that wants to pull anything,
Motion to approve items.
we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now on to non-public. Okay. So I will have to open up public comment, and I have a few people that want to speak on a few of these items. And we will start with item 20, and I have Alan McPherson. Would you please give your name and your address?
Al McPherson, 5311 Dan Christie Lane.
Thank you.
I came to the committee a year ago in August and also to the City Council with the issue of the water coming down Enchantment Road that brings rocks and garbage cans and so on. Those are some of the rocks. Now, Enchantment development was started in 20 years ago, 1999. Our house was the first house built on the corner of Dan Christie and Enchantment Road. So the issue I brought to you is one of two major problems, and the first problem is the water coming down the hill. This problem has existed for 20 years. When we moved in there 10 years ago, in August, the next summer, we got our first taste of the rocks coming down the hill. So for the past 9 years, we've been sweeping the rocks off of that corner every summer on major rains. Do I have that upside down? It's probably hard to see, but this is our house 6 years ago when we had a major rain. The water came down. Am I too loud? Okay. Came down, filled up our entire yard, side, back, front. You see that wall there? That's a concrete wall that's 105 feet long, 22 inches high, 8 inches thick, and at the bottom it's 16 inches. What we did not know until just a couple weeks ago, the previous owner in 2008 had that built because he got water in his basement. He did not disclose that to us, so we didn't know it. The city made an effort. Sorry. I'm part-time here. City made an effort, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and had a contractor build a channel there, dug a channel, dirt channel, at about halfway up the hill from us, and it was useless. You can see that it's overgrown. It doesn't take any water off of Enchantment Road. Let's see, is that upside down again? No. If you look there, at the very top is our window well. So to prevent water coming into our house, I built that little wall. At the very bottom, on Enchantment Road, I built a 105-foot wall, 5.5 inches high. And if you look to the right there, I built that little wall connected to that cement wall. Now, we do not have an issue of water coming down the hill and going into our yard. Okay? The problem is that water comes down, goes around our corner, goes down to Katrin on the right side, on the west side of the road, then it crosses Dan Christie, and when it's extreme, it goes out onto Katrin Boulevard. Well, earlier this summer, DOT did not like that, so they contacted the city. Somebody from the city came down, took some large vehicle, and on the east side of the Dan Christie, they drove into the ditch and created a rut. We didn't figure that out right away. That prevents water from going out into Katrin. What it doesn't do, if they had done it on the other side of the road, that water would not cross Dan Christie. Now, the numbers that might get your attention, the previous owner and we together have expenses around $25,000. The major part isn't the water coming down the hill. The major part is this. August 2nd, well, wait a minute. We've never really had an issue about pumping water out of the house. It was very infrequent in the summertime, never ever in the wintertime. For over a year, since last July, we have been pumping water out of that sump pump 24 hours a day to the tune up to 14,000 gallons a day. Now, we assumed it was the 8 inches of above average water last year. It wasn't. I even dug a hole in the window well, installed another sump pump, and together they pumped for a year. Now, I'm not into exercise, but I'm guessing I went up and down those stairs every day for at least 10 times to a tune of about 3,000 trips downstairs. Okay? Remember I said we assumed it was the rain? Last fall, we got water in one of our basements, bedroom. After January, we had part of our drain tile replaced, about 20 feet. They break up the concrete inside your house and replace it. After that, the other bedroom got water in it. And after that, we got some water into our furnace room. Now this year, we got 10 inches of rain above average. But here's what happened. August 2nd, wait a minute, I'll back up. There was a resident up on Kale Court, about 3 blocks, in March, had to install 4 sump pumps pumping 10,000 gallons an hour. On August 2nd, up the hill a little further, the residents saw water coming up into their driveway. They found a main leak that was going across the street into an empty lot. And it appears that leak must have started last year and has been building up, and finally it got to that point where the water came up where it leaked. We assumed it was the water table all that time. Now, when they found it on August 2nd, about August 4th, all the water stopped. We had no more water in our drain tile, none in our sump pumps, and that neighbor up on Kale Court, theirs stopped because they were pumping it continuously. No more water. The other neighbor across the street in his drain field had water sitting in there. His stopped. I get a little flustered because it's hard to explain everything, but we had our total drain tile broken up inside the house and replaced a total of 170 feet of drain tile because we assumed that might be part of the problem. And that was $14,500. That cement wall that guy put in, I don't know. I'm guessing it cost him several $1,000s. Well, that first bedroom that got water in, we fixed that, replaced the carpet. Now we have 2 other bedrooms, that same one, another one we have to replace the carpet in. So all I'm asking here, oh, by the way, that leak up there, the city official indicated that it's the owner of the property's responsibility. I don't understand how that could be because it wasn't connected to them. Okay, the thing I'm asking you to do is pass this on to the council, city council, and I'll gladly go there. But they need a permanent culvert up there on Enchantment Road to take that water out of there and be done with this issue. 20 years. And it could have been fixed. And the reason that water comes down is because there were no storm drains all the way from the top of that hill to our corner to take that water. It goes past our corner, and then they've built storm sewers, storm drains. All I ask is that it be fixed. Of course, I'd like you to refund me for some of my expenses, but thank you. Oh, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. McPherson. We'll actually come to it next, and if anybody has any questions, they can ask you then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
So now on to item 22, Mr. Dane Boomsma. If you'd give us your name and your address before you
A
speak
little more
forever.
excitement next time you say my name, please.
You know what I think of you.
Dane Boomsma, 550 North 5th Street. I am here representing a ownership group, really, that is developing a property that is on item agenda number 22. We are just extending the homestead subdivision to the south that Mr. Ron Shape has developed over the last 10 years or more, starting to add similar type homes as he dealt with as well, and we're dealing with on Reservoir. In order to plat up against it, city DCIM says that we have to put in all the improvements. I know that this is a discussion that the last time I was at council and this was discussed, that it was a lengthy conversation, and everybody wants new ideas how to get this infrastructure that is abutted half by county, half by city, how to implement that and get that stuff put in. I don't have those solutions. I'm hoping this comes up and maybe staff has worked on some things and maybe we can get creative, maybe not, but we would like to move forward with the subdivision. We do have on our preliminary plan, we do have an access drawn to Reservoir Road, but that is not an access that we need. That's not an access that would make us not do the development. So if it came down to that, we would control the traffic within the improved area of the neighborhood. That's something we're open to, meaning if we had to block off that access so that we're not increasing traffic on on a substandard road. But that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. And Justin Hendrickson?
Yep.
Sorry, I skipped you.
No worries. So I own a property on Glenside and Homestead. It's on the old side of Homestead. And I'm just looking to split the lot because the way they plotted the original house on it left a lot of, I've actually got the plotting if anybody wants to look at it on the fancy screen. So I'm just looking to split that into 2 lots to do a little bit of residential infill. And city wants me to pave the street and add ditches and basically make it not worthwhile to split that lot. And all I'm trying to do is infill and, yeah, build some more affordable housing.
Thank you very much. When we get to the item, council members may have more questions for you. And lastly, item 23, Mr. David Bradsky.
This is the biggest item of your day. Dave Bradsky, 927 Main Street. And we own Daiquiri. Anyway, we used to have, actually just sold the building, the Rushmore building downtown, and we had a $800 water bill come in when normally it's like $130. And I called the city, and they sent a gentleman down. We inspected the meter. We inspected all the bathrooms. There's only bathrooms in there. There's like 4 of them. And there's really no explanation for the jump like that. And, you know, I asked the city to waive part of it or waive it simply because I have no explanation. The city has no explanation. They said, well, something must have happened. I checked with all the tenants. Nothing happened. Like I said, there's not even any outside source. The boiler's been turned off. It's just bathrooms, toilets, no broken water lines. And my position is it's just as likely there was a jump or a defect in the meter as there was with anything inside. But I don't have an explanation for it, and that's all I was asking for. They denied it, and I paid it under protest, and they called yesterday and said, well, you're on the agenda, so here I am. I'm sure everybody's got better things to do, like go eat lunch, but...
Okay. Thank you. Ask him that question later. So that is the end of the public comment, so I will close it and we'll go on to item 20, a request by Alan McPherson to speak to the committee. I think he already did, so if any members of the council have any questions for him, if not, okay. Ms. Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping those of us that were on this council when this first came before us a year ago, and Mr. McPherson had brought it to our attention, and at that time we only had a couple of rain events, and this year we may have the new normal rain events, who's to say. But it showed at that time when he brought this to our attention that we had an issue that had been ongoing in that water movement and the diversion process that was a failure. And you can see by his cost, expense, and his work, he has put in the money to try to resolve. Now as he's bringing to our attention a water line perhaps that's caused even more damages, that I just have some concerns on that. It seems to me that when we have any kind of our residents questioning water, whether it's bill or coming into your home, we should be doing whatever we can as a customer service to explore all of the situation in order to try to maybe find some of these problems ahead of time. So his request is quite simple from his presentation, and that's to perhaps look at an engineering project to move that culvert into there to move the water. And I'm sure he's paying his drainage fees like we all are, and this is one of those drainage fees issues. So with the statements, I'd like to ask Mr. Tech a question, if I could.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So Dale, because this has been on our plate now for over a year for us, 20 years for Mr. McPherson, where are we at on this, and what can we do to finally resolve Dan Christie?
City staff has gone out and met with Mr. McPherson, talked to him about the water that runs down Enchantment Road. Conveying stormwater in city streets is not unusual. It happens all over town, not only in Rapid City, but all over this world. Certainly, we've had excessive rain the last 2 years, causes problems. Mr. McPherson's photos certainly illustrate that point. All the debris that's washed out in the road, well, that's all landscaping rock. Certainly installing storm sewers to intercept the stormwater running down the hill may alleviate that. However, that rock is still going to wash out in high-intensity rainfall. If there's some sort of solution that is desired, it's going to take some study. We can all go out there and say, well, this will help. Well, we don't know if it will or not. The drainage ditch that he referenced, that was actually installed back when the subdivision was originally built. So the engineer of record of that subdivision was the one that designed that. The city went in a few years ago to try to make improvements to it to make it function a little better. That is over a quarter a mile away from his home, so even if it intercepted all the stormwater, there's a quarter mile of road that still is going to contribute to water down at Dan Christie Lane. So making improvements there is not a guarantee that it's going to fix what Mr. McPherson is pointing out, what he believes to be an issue. As far as the DOT, to my knowledge, they have not said anything to engineering staff or to myself about the problem. Certainly we'll reach out to the DOT when they reconstructed Catron Boulevard. I'm certain they took into account the stormwater runoff from Dan Christie on to Catron and should have made the appropriate accommodations for that stormwater. There may be a solution there that might be fairly simple. Don't know. We'll have to get with the DOT. That's in their right of way. We aren't allowed to work in their right of way without their permission. So, and then one other thing I guess I would like to talk about is the leak. It was a private service line that was leaking, so it's not a city water main. Unfortunately, the home that service line is going to go to doesn't exist. It was a vacant lot. So that lot has been vacant for a number of years, and that service line started leaking. And certainly if there was a home connected to it, that would have been apparent. The leak did not surface, so it was impossible to find until it did surface. And so that's the background on that particular issue. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So then do we have a customer service commitment maybe that you will reach out to the DOT, check that culvert situation on their side, and perhaps research that corner as well to see if there's anything else that we can do to protect a property owner?
Well, certainly. I mean, I could say today, well, we'll put a project together to put in a storm sewer there. Well, I don't have any idea if that will be effective. It may not help one bit. So we're going to have to look a little deeper into the issue to see if, first of all, the original drainage plan for that development is valid still. And if it is, I don't know if it's within city criteria still, I don't know what the solution is.
Do you need an action to place this on a study, or is it something you can put in?
No, this is something that we'll take a look at, and if we believe that it needs more work, such as a consultant, then we'll bring that project forward.
Great. And I think that is a great answer. It's certainly the customer side of what we're doing to take care of this. And I think this, Mr. McPherson, I want to appreciate the fact that you brought this back to our attention after a year, and not knowing that we would have 10 inches of rainfall and multiple rain events. It certainly has been frustrating, I know, to you and to several of the neighbors that I've heard from as well. But we've got an opportunity here to trigger a study and to also have the communication with the DOT on your behalf. And Mr. Chair, Mr. McPherson would like to ask a question. Would you like me to relieve the floor, or?
Go ahead and ask him.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson,
The,
I just want to add that one
Okay.
of the requests that you have was to take a look at this, and to your benefit, our Director at Public Works is going to take a look at this a lot deeper for you, and we can't make up what we've lost in the last year, but I think we should move this forward and see if there's something that can get done for you.
I understand that there's a couple things. When they first put in that trench and that concrete part there, it went in a little bit, but after it built up, you could see that the water is bouncing back onto Enchantment Road. Just across the street from that, there is a drain, an opening that goes into some ravine. Well, at one time, they had some tubular things blocking the water from going in there. So I think water could go out there. The other thing is the rock thing, the first year it happened, our rocks also went into the street. So for $1,000, those rocks were replaced with larger ones which no longer wash into the street. So if the people up the hill could do that, that would resolve that problem. As far as the Dan Christie, the water going across, DOT did contact some city workers. There were two guys down there with shovels on the west side of the road digging a little dirt channel there to alleviate some of the water. And we too have gone down there a couple of times to do that. So
You.
they need a trench there as well. So
And as a good neighbor, you might want to knock on your neighbors' doors, because it's really beneficial when you share with your neighbors what's working well for you, such as the big rocks,
Well,
because it's
there's-
costing them money every time they wash away as well. And
Yeah.
perhaps just a simple communication of how far you've taken this might be beneficial to them, and it makes you a good neighbor too. I don't have anything else because I know I need to relieve the floor, but thank you, Mr. McPherson, and thank you, Mr. Tech, as well, for following up.
Thank you. Can I get somebody to, Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
I just had a question for Mr. Tech. Is there any technology available to us now with all the advances in, finding that can locate these kind of leaks? I know in aging infrastructure, it's a problem in all cities, the efficiency of the water system. Is there anything new that's out that is available to find these things before they start causing these problems? I know over in like the West Rapid area with all these big gypsum caves and everything we have under, so water could be pouring into some of those for years and we'd never know it, and we'd just be taking loss.
Actually, yes, there is very interesting technology, and we employ it. There are companies that we hire on an annual basis. Actually, we don't do that anymore because we ourselves purchase the equipment to do that leak detection. Not only that, but there are proprietary technologies that we've taken advantage of. In the last year, we partnered with Rapid Valley Sanitary District and did a outer space satellite imaging leak detection program. They identified, I think it was 90 potential areas that there could be leaks. Once those were narrowed in a little bit, you can actually determine if there was, I believe there was about 5 or 6 leaks that were determined out of the 90 potential spots. So yes, we're doing this constantly. It's not like we just ignore our system. Our water distribution folks are very serious about what they do, are very interested in making sure that our system is operating to the best that it can. All water systems leak, though. That's just a matter of fact. The Rapid Valley Sanitary District's no different than Rapid City Water System. They're all going to have leaks.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Now, if we can get
A motion to acknowledge?
into second.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we got a motion to acknowledge from Councilwoman Armstrong and a second by Councilman Stroman. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item 21, an appeal of a partial denial of an exception request to allow for reduced pavement widths No installation of curb and gutter and streetlight conduit along Glenside and Homestead streets. Staff supports not installing curb and gutter and streetlight conduit, but is requiring the streets to be constructed to a rural road section and a turnaround constructed on Glenside Street. Alderwoman Armstrong, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. May I direct a question to Mr. Tech?
You may.
We heard Mr. What's your last name?
Hendrickson.
Hendrickson's side. Could I just get a little input from your department on this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Hendrickson, he's just quite open and honest. I just want to split a lot. Well, that is development. That increase in rooftop, pervious area, traffic, you know, most people would say, well, that's just a minor issue. Let's not worry about that. Well, every time you do that, we end up with issues in town. Streets that should have been paved that weren't, and all of a sudden you've got a number of residents living on them that have a dust issue or a drainage issue. I believe staff really went to work and said, all right, you just need to do the basics. You don't need curb and gutter, street light con, all this stuff that's in our requirements, but the basic expectation is it needs to be a hard surface road to prevent issues with dust, make some improvements to the ditch because adding a future house there is going to add to the stormwater runoff, and that needs to be addressed. I guess that's my perspective on this issue. Certainly it's your decision to make whether or not you want to require the improvements.
Any public safety issues?
Yes.
I know that certainly the police department has issues with increase in development and the traffic and speed, so, you know, certainly they support, this is a conversation I had with Chief Jegris just the other day, that they support making these improvements. It makes their life a little easier when it comes to enforcement. I believe fire department certainly would like to have the improvements installed as well. Tim can pipe in if he'd like, but we're a growing community and we need to grow correctly.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask Mr. Tech a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So this area, and I've driven it quite a bit to include the other item that we have on this with Homestead and Reservoir. But in looking at on Glenshire Street, when we look at what he's requesting, it really is not a continuous road. It looks to me, unless there's something in future plan that we don't have from the map, that it's servicing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes, and if he splits the lot, then it would be 6 homes. And it has no end, it has a beginning, but it has no place to go from there. It's dirt driveways, so it's extremely rural, which I just want to absolutely appreciate staff for considering the rural road necessity here and not placing under our criteria manual lighting and curb and gutter. But this entire area is very, very, very rural. There is, from what I can tell from the mapping, all dirt and no concrete even in the driveways or asphalts. And so I'm not sure where a benefit of this would happen on this street that goes right into 2 driveways. It doesn't, it's not a continuous road unless that's in a plan, and maybe you can let me know.
The question is whether or not it's in a plan to be extended.
Right, it shows,
No,
it shows
it's-
here, it's just going to driveways.
It's not, but certainly the properties to the north, if they decide to redevelop in the future, Glenside would be an obvious choice for extension. I don't have a crystal ball. I couldn't tell you if that's going to ever happen or not. However, the expectation is in Rapid City, you are going to live on a paved street, and that's for a number of reasons, as I mentioned earlier, for dust control and for drainage.
And who maintains that street now?
Well, it's public right-of-way within the city of Rapid City. The city of Rapid City maintains it.
So are we keeping snow removal and all that going on out there?
Well, yeah, we do snow removal per city policy, yes.
And again, as I'm looking at this, and I know we don't have a crystal ball, and that's where it makes it really tough to put the costs on a homeowner that just wants to divide a nice piece of property, which does help for our affordable housing because it is an extension of where we are and allows more property for a homeowner, and everything along that entire area, including Homestead, in this radius, is all dirt. So I'm not sure if we're really solving a problem.
Homestead is hard surfaced.
Yeah, Homestead is, but everything off of Homestead. If we look at everything off of Homestead, it's sitting in there with dirt driveways and dirt fields. It's not, I'm not sure if we're going to really get what we want out of this, which is an out-of-the-dust project.
I guess my response to that is, this is an issue that we just had lengthy discussion about this spring on East St. Francis Street, where new homes were constructed on a gravel road, and now we're scrambling to get it paved.
Right, and that actually became a development, you're absolutely right, and this one, it's rural acreage. I need to ask our resident owner, Mr. Hendrickson, a question, if I could.
Absolutely.
What is the acreage on this, before you divide it?
It is like .082.
And that is on the piece that you want to divide?
That would be the whole piece of ground. So in essence, they'd end up with like .41, or depending where we drew the line.
And do you have this property sold yet, or is it an intent to sell?
Well, no, honestly, I plan to build a house on it and either sell the house or turn it into a rental. The other house is already going to become a rental.
Okay. So-
Honestly, and I can answer the Glenside going through question that you had.
Please.
That is all school district land directly behind those two lots that this road ends on. So that's already been deeded to the school district, so there should really be no future development back there unless the school district decides to sell that land. So that's probably always going to be a dead end. And to my knowledge, there's no easement going through those two lots at the end of that road.
And really what this does is it creates a financial hardship to a light idea that you have to use land for a purpose that it has a need for now, which is more homes, rentals or otherwise. And unfortunately, the neighborhood is the benefactor of what's being requested of you.
Well, you know, the way I look at it is there's so much urban sprawl, and this is something that's fairly close to town that really isn't a good use of ground. I mean, if I have to pave the road, it's not going to benefit me splitting the lot. So, I mean, it's just kind of wasted ground unless somebody's going to come in and build a big shop or want to have a motorcycle track next to their house because they've got the ground to do it.
Mm-hmm. On the back end, it looks like there is it storage or something else that's connected to you?
Back when it was still in the county, this is the house I grew up in, so I can tell you all you want to know about this neighborhood. They put up like 80 by 100 or 80 by 200 shops on the backside of that property. And yeah, there's only one house that's covering in the front of those shops, that original house.
Is there traffic?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's full of rich guys' old rich guys' cars, because there's a whole lot of nice cars shoved in those warehouses.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think one of the nice things about Rapid City is that the development in the late 50s, 60s, 70s was all very consistent, very tucked in, Meadowbrook, Pinedale, you know, all of these areas that look so fine, and the consistency is one of the things that make it so nice. However, in this case, we've got a lot here where the first house got to go in and they didn't have to pave it, and the second house went in and they didn't have to pay it, and then the third house goes in, they got to pay it, they didn't have to pay it, and then the fourth house went in and they didn't have to pave it, and now Mr. Hendrickson is expected to pave it for everybody else, and that just doesn't seem fair to me, to be honest with you. Now, perhaps sometime in the future, he would decide, if he could get together with all those neighbors, they decide to split it 6 ways and pave the thing. I mean, that would be righteous. And so I think our job as city councilmen is to make our constituents have a good life, be fair to them, and play fair. So in this particular case, I would have to agree with Mr. Henderson. It's not going to affect that neighborhood one bit, and it would be a nice building lot for a house that would add some urban density there. So I would say we should give him that exception. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. And if I can just have a second, if the committee doesn't mind? Thank you very much. Mr. Hendrickson, do you know how many feet of, from where your road starts until where your lot ends, how many feet are they asking you to pave?
Roughly 265.
265?
That's
Now-
the length of the road.
Now, if I could ask the resident road builder in the room, Mr. Boomsma, can you get up to the podium, please, Mr. Boomsma?
$600 per linear foot.
Okay, so you're looking at roughly $20,000 to pave that.
More than that, I think. Well, maybe roughly, yeah.
Roughly, so 600, how many feet did you say?
265.
265?
That shaping and adding more gravel.
Well, anytime you rebuild, reconstruct a road, and especially a small project like that, you know, that's our average on a new subdivision when we're doing 700 feet of road.
Yes.
So more than likely, you're going to add increased cost.
Well, and also he would probably have to rework his drainage for his drainage ditches on the sides. He's going to have, so I'd say 600 at a minimum, 20,000, 25. How big is your lot, Mr. Hendricks?
As far as full lot size or as far as feet?
Full lot size.
Full lot size.
Quarter of an acre, half acre?
Oh, no, yeah, 0.8. So a little over 3/4 of an acre.
Okay. So, you know, at least half of your cost of your lot's going to be eaten up by road, at least, if not more. So that's just the point that I wanted to make on this. And I loved Mr. Evans's pitch on this because it is so true, and we see this all over town, all over the place, where the last person coming in is the one that gets hit with the most costs. Or, you know, if you're a developer and you're coming in and you're making improvements for your neighbors. I mean, there's so many things that we do in this town that just don't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. So you have my support on this when it gets to the council. And I will quit there and look for some kind of a motion on this.
That's $130,000, $650 a foot at $200 or 200 feet is $130,000.
$130,000. I'm sorry. My math was way off. That you know, that's what you're for. Thank you, Mr. Boomsma. Well, and like I was saying up here, whispering to one of my colleagues, there's no way that this is affordable to do, you know, unless he has an exception. Anyway, Lisa, you're in the queue.
Thank you. I do make that motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the appeal and allow the exception.
So I have a motion by Alderwoman Modrick and a second by Alderman Evans, and Laura Armstrong is in the queue.
Thank you, Chair. May I direct a question to Mr. Tech?
Absolutely.
Mr. Tech, you're just shaking your head. I'm just itching to know your comments before the vote goes through.
We are getting ready to advertise for bids for the paving of East Francis Street, and it's going to be in the neighborhood of $70,000. So $130,000 for 260 feet is not a correct estimate. I would prefer, if you're going to throw out numbers, get somebody to give you a true estimate for the work instead of a napkin, back of the napkin estimate here from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tech, and I'll make sure I bring an estimate in when I come in Monday night.
May I do a substitute motion to postpone this? Maybe just move it to council, and then you could have some time to get some estimates, and then you can bring that?
Yeah, I can bring an estimate to council if you'd like.
And that way we can make a more educated decision. I mean, I have a feeling we're hearing extremes, and I'd like to know more realistic numbers. That's my thought.
No,
don't know if I
absolutely.
don't know if I can get a second on that.
I would recommend, if you're going to make that motion, just to make a substitute motion to take it to council without recommendation.
I think that's excellent, Mr. Chair. So may I make that substitute motion as you verbalized it?
And if we can get a second?
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion from Councilwoman Armstrong and a second from Councilman Stroman to take this to council without recommendation. Do you want back in the queue? I do. All right, Councilwoman Modrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you feel, Mr. Tech, that this is a very reasonable option for our homeowner, then is there a way to piggyback the Out of the Dust program onto this little tiny strip that's still going to cost him a small fortune based on what he's got?
No, my recommendation is, if you're going to develop, subdivide property, there are costs involved in that. Certainly this council, that's what you're being asked to do, is to make a decision. We have many other existing needs other than trying to go out and pave someone's new subdivision, so that would not be a recommendation of mine.
And I know when we used the example of St. Francis and they waited 10 years for this and it was passed on to us by the county, and it was unfortunate, but the timing was everything. And I know that the many homeowners out there, and it is an actual development with some very, very nice homes. They're in great appreciation that this council and that Public Works had moved us into the Out of the Dust project, but this is not even apples to apples with what's being requested from this homeowner with this very small piece of parcel who's been raised on this land, to actually finish it with a piece of home that could be there on Homestead. So I still support that we should be able to allow it to stay as it is with my first motion.
Thank you very much, and we do have a motion. Nobody else in the queue?
Did you restate the motion?
Yes, the motion was a substitute motion by Councilwoman Armstrong to take this to council without recommendation, and the seconder was Councilman Stroman.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion goes to the council without recommendation. Item 22 I have to abstain from, so I am going to give the chair to Alder.
Oh, I guess we do have to play musical chairs. Thank you. We have item number 22. Mr. Roberts has to abstain. We have an appeal by Broker Fund Dividend LLC of an exception request partial denial to waive the requirement to install public improvements on Reservoir Road. Staff recommendation is to deny. Do we have any discussion on this item? Mrs. Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Substitute Chair. May I ask Mr. Boomsma a question on this?
Absolutely, Mr. Boomsa.
Hi, thanks for coming back up. So we had quite a bit of discussion about this a year ago, as you had mentioned, and as we remembered, but we do have new counsel on Public Works here. If you could maybe bring us up to date, and I don't know if they've had a chance to go out to Reservoir, but when you do go out there, it really allows you to see, once again, the development that's happening there, but also the rural sides that are around it. So maybe if you could bring our newest council members up to date with why we are working on this today.
So it's really similar, honestly, to even what this gentleman was dealing with.
Yes.
Reservoir Road was a county road, and I don't even know for sure if it's 100% city-owned now or not, but obviously when it was built as a gravel road, it was county road. They developed Enon Drive on the east side. Enon Drive residents do not access Reservoir Road. They access Enon Drive. So Reservoir Road really feeds what is still agricultural to the north of it. I believe once the property that we're talking about is developed, there may be 2 or 3 homes to the north of where Enon Drive ends, and the northernmost border of this property, which on the master street plan's Anamosa. So it's real similar to the fact that they developed however many years ago in the county. They didn't use it for primary access. We're not asking to use it for primary access, but that is in the master street plan. I'm not sure if it's a major collector or arterial, but it's a major street project to overtake that. We hate kicking the can down the road. This is a conversation we've had, but there's no tools in place right now that the developer can easily come in and absorb that cost. You can't just absorb it or even supplement that cost working with the city. There's no tools right now that we've been given or offered as developers to try and work with the city on that. We've tried a couple of conversations with Mr. Tech and his department in the past. The TIF plan, that's all getting changed, which is not in a developer's favor. So we're kind of, as developers, we need to keep moving. We have a growth. We know we have a growth coming. We want to keep, I'm going to call this affordable. This is not what my affordable, but more people can afford the houses we're going to build in this subdivision than not afford. The people that are buying, the majority of them can afford this house. So to that definition of affordable, this will be an affordable neighborhood. And we don't have anywhere other than the east side of town. There's certain benefits to this area with the school system right there, which we're working with city staff. I had a great meeting with Vicki and Kumar from the school the other day. They requested, we showed a road into the school, and the school said, we don't want a road. We want to be able to direct the traffic for safety. Completely understand. He said, but it'd be nice to have a walkway. You're going to have a lot of neighborhood kids. And I said, we'll put the walkway in. This was another discussion that's probably going to be in front of the council at some point. Vicki's saying, I don't think city's going to take that walkway over. The school's saying, I have $1,300 in my budget. Me as a developer saying, I'm going to give you the land and I'm going to put the sidewalk in for the safety of the kids, but when I'm out of lots, I'm gone. I'm not around anymore. Some public entity needs to take that 100 feet of 5-foot sidewalk for the benefit of our community. So those are all discussions that we were having. I know I kind of got sidetracked on that sidewalk, but that's something that we're trying to do, is work with the city and the school to ensure that safety of the kids walking to and from school, because they're not going to bus because they're right next to the school right there. So they're going to be cutting across yards so that's kind of the history.
And in that section, when it goes above the actual reservoir itself, the portion that you are going to develop, how many homes are going to go in there?
We have, I think right now our rough layout is like 99 lots.
Okay.
And on that, I'll just touch on that land, there's a major drainage reservoir easement that encompasses that land. That was one of the first TIFs they did in Pennington County, that one, and as well as the one down by Avenue A, that is part of this property that we plan on platting as a drainage lot. Right now it's just an easement overlaying the property. That obviously has to be maintained, but it was those projects funded by a TIF that allowed any development in that area whatsoever. Without those major drainage easement or drainage basins, that would not have ever got developed. And I want to give you the history that was the very first TIF ever done in Pennington County was that drainage basin.
This one is from when you spoke to us before, when we were looking at this piece, and where we're at today. We know now with the school announcements, with the base announcements, we know that this is a great opportunity to get those 99 homes in and make it affordable housing. But with the school, I think we're in a tough one on this one, because we do need the improvements today so that they last for 30 or 40 or 50 years. And that is Public Works' job, is to make sure that we're putting improvements in where they need to be because of growth. And you're sitting on a growth mine here, which is appreciated. So this one is tough. Originally, I didn't see as much need. Today I may, and I hope to hear some other consulting here from our council as well. But thank you for that. If there's anything else you have to ask, but I need to probably pass it on to the next one if there is another one in there. There isn't, I don't think. I have the floor all day. Anything else you want to add before this council perhaps takes?
I don't disagree with you whatsoever. that, you know, there's certain need for certain infrastructure and things like that. There's rules in place in the design criteria manual and ordinance that requires that so many access for so many lots. We meet all of those access requirements. And so the only argument to that, I'm not saying reservoir doesn't need to be done. Reservoir needs to be done at some point. It does not need to be done to continue the residential growth. We have all the access for safety, for fire. All of those things are being addressed. That reservoir road is obviously a longer term plan. So where's the balance between our 20 and 30-year planning when Anamosa finally connects over and in the next 5 years? And the reality is, if there's no solution in place, I can tell you that the ownership group, which I have a very small part of, but I can promise you that if that's a requirement, this 40 acres will just sit there, and we'll go over the hill into the Northern Lights subdivision, which is Box Elder Municipality, and instead of 30 lots, we're going to put 60 in, and guess what? All those kids are still going to Rapid Valley Elementary because that's a Rapid Valley Elementary school district. So it's just, we got to decide as a city, how can we do this? And we've been asking as developers to give us some tools, give us some options to work with. And to date, I don't know that we have any other than the TIF program that is getting harder.
Maybe you should file right away before the change happens. Well, we're all up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Modrick. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Before you leave the rostrum there, is there an estimate of what this would cost? You know, when we saw Mr. Hendrickson, obviously it's the full value of the land. I mean, to me, it's a non-starter because it really doesn't make it possible for him at all. How much exactly would this cost you in the overall development? Thank you.
So when we develop, for the most part, what we deal with is the residential stuff. There's not a very few major commercial or major thoroughways that are being developed. And so when I said $650, that's an average that we're running on a residential new street. So that's all your water. Well, start with grade work, which we have significant grade work on most of our projects in Rapid City because we don't live in a flat area. So you got grade work, sewer, water, paving, all your gravel. One thing that Mr. Tech, I'm sure, is not including in that bid is all your engineering, all your bonding, all of the soft costs, if you will, in doing with development. So to answer your question, Mr. Evans, what that street, I have no idea because that is a major street that needs drainage, storm sewer, it needs major water and sewer main improvement. So what we're doing on our side of Reservoir is the exact same thing that was done on the other side of Reservoir, and that's some residential lots. That's why I just kind of go back to, we don't actually need Reservoir. That's why we show access because that's smart growth, but maybe we don't allow access. To put more wear and tear on a gravel road is my point there. And you know, this gentleman here, if you look at Rapid Map, I was looking at it, he's doing the exact same thing. The two lots right across the street, total are 0.8. For whatever reason, when his family bought the lot, they got 0.8 instead of 0.4. So he's really not a developer in my mind. All he's doing is building what should already be there. And that's kind of what we're doing on this subdivision. We're only matching what they've already done on the other side of Reservoir, and all of our access, all of our safety, all of our fire, all of that stuff is up to standard.
Do you?
No, I honestly, I need more fact-finding on this myself to make an educated vote, to be honest with you. And I don't know if there's a way to delay it to the next meeting rather than act on it now. I don't know exactly the protocol, but I don't feel qualified to give an educated vote on this because I don't know enough about that one. So if you have a suggestion to solve that problem, I'm new to the process.
Okay, great. Do you mind? Mr. Tech, you're in the queue.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, I'd like to offer out, if you could study the attachments, particularly the agenda summary that was written by staff. If you could study that, and if you have any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you. Certainly don't have to do it right now. It's going to take a little bit of effort to... Okay. Sure. Right. Sure.
We need to have a little more data in the future.
Okay. All right. Are you done? Are you done? Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Stroman, and Mr. Tech, were you done as well? Okay, thank you. Mr. Stroman?
May I ask a question, Mr. Tech?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So, Dale, as I'm looking through the summary and the submissions, it does look to me like the city tried to meet the developer halfway on this. Is that, can you explain what exactly took place? in that?
Absolutely. This is, you know, I will agree with Mr. Boomsma on one thing. There is not a good solution to keep everybody happy. This stuff costs money. Staff rolled up their sleeves and basically said, okay, you're not wanting to do anything. We've heard arguments in the past from other folks that it's only fair for me to do what I have to do, my half. And that's what's in front of you today, was a compromise solution that city staff brought forward to just work on the west half of the road, and we'll figure the east half out later.
Thank you. That's the way it appears to me, is that the city, I think, proposed a compromise that I can support that. As it stands right now, I don't, if we don't have any other information, I would support the city's position that they'd offered to just meet them halfway on this. Thank you.
And just so everybody remembers, the south property here was granted the exception. So even if we agreed to do our half, in the two abutting properties to Reservoir, which is basically 2 40-acre parcels worth, minus a little bit on the south end. So you have about a half a mile, less than a half a mile of road that needs to be done. Okay, so I do the west half of my adjoining property. Now we have a quarter of that road improved. Because the south property, adjacent south property, the council's already granted the exception, develop the property up to Reservoir without the improvements. So I'm going to do mine, so you're going to be fully developed, 1,000 feet of gravel, and then we're going to have the west half of my adjoining my property paved. I don't know how that's smart, I don't know how that makes sense, but I'm open to discussion.
All right, any further discussion on this matter? Mrs. Modrick.
I'd like to make a motion which would allow council to have a little more information, and that would be to move this without recommendation to council so that more fact-finding, more conversation can happen, and to bring us up to speed.
Right.
And can I still retain the floor?
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Tech, I would like to have a little answer to that 1,000 feet question. It's the 1,000-pound elephant in the room about the difference between the end and the beginning of what we're asking on this development from the exception.
Be happy to provide that information next Tuesday night.
Do you have anything at all, or do you want to link it, or what are you going to do?
I don't have a photographic memory, so
Okay.
I don't know what happened in the past. We'll have to research that and get back to you.
I think that will be very helpful for decision-making process. And Mr. Bones, you can come back on Tuesday. That would be great. We'll see where we can go from here and bring more facts as well, link it in, and let's get on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Modrick has made a motion to postpone this, or actually to move this to City Council's next meeting on Tuesday the 3rd without any recommendations. We have a second by Mr. Evans. All in favor? Aye. Any? We have one abstention, so it passes with one abstention. And I will turn this back over to our chair, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you very much. Can I have my sheet back so I can look at...
I took your papers.
Yes, thank you. So now we go on to item 23, a request by Mr. David Bradsky for, how do you pronounce that? Dakari? Daiquiri. Oh, dang, I don't drink enough. LLC, to reduce June 10th, 2019 utility billing by $792.91 incurred for water and sewer usage at the property located at 731 St. Joseph Street. And Councilwoman Armstrong, you have the floor.
Yes, Chair, may I direct a question to Mr. Bradsky?
Absolutely.
Just a quick question. When you initially spoke, I thought I heard you say you already paid the bill?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
That was an easy question.
I yield.
Councilwoman Modrick? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the billing by $792.91 as incurred, and if I get a second, or either way, retain the floor. Thank you, I'll retain the floor. So I think the proof is in the billing. It shows what their previous billings are. All of a sudden, we have a bump and then another reduction, and there are hiccups in our water billing process. We've seen them many times. We've seen $9,000. We've seen $900. We've seen $9. It just happens. If we don't have an explanation in here from the city as to the reason, if it's just an unknown, but we do have proof of billing cycle, and billing cycle tells all, then why wouldn't we consider making an adjustment or a credit on this water bill? If everything in his findings and what he shared is nominal and it's toilets without leaks, then how else can this happen? If we don't have an explanation from the city and we have proof of billing, then to me, this is a credit. It's that we've got a hiccup. It happens. It happens more than we like to admit, but it does happen. It happens often. And I think we have a hiccup here. There's no other explanation. So I'm in favor of reducing a bill that doesn't have anything that's behind it as to why water would increase 900% or wherever we're at. I mean, this is a crazy number. So that's why I would like to make a motion to find a reduction or a credit.
Thank you. Councilman Evans, you have the floor.
Well, I have such an amusing little anecdote here, anecdote. And I just got back from a trip where I was gone for a week. And I went down to my basement restroom, and the toilet had been flowing the whole time I was gone. So what I did was I called my sister and said, I'm going to get a bill for $1,000 because I didn't check that toilet before I left town. My bad. And so in this case, I don't have a lot of money, but I figure it's my responsibility to take care of those sort of things. So I would say, check to make sure no faucets are on. That's where I'm going to be on this one.
Thank you. Mr. Tech, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alderman Roberts. I'm going to take exception to what Councilwoman Modrick said. We don't have big problems with our utility billing. When we did a utility billing conversion a number of years ago, there were some issues. First, I want to talk about the technical aspects of water metering, not only in Rapid City, but throughout the great United States. The way water meters are designed is they never register more water than can flow through them. That's the beauty of the design. We had offered to Mr. Bradsky to test the water meter, and he declined. It cost money to do that. It was a $100 charge to do that, so we had offered to do that. This is a classic example. I have the history of the billing right here in front of me. This is a classic example of either a toilet flowing for a number of days on end or some other water usage that was undetected. Certainly if they're commercial type toilets, they can flow and then they can stop. We see this instance throughout town, and you can look at the meter records and see exactly what the problem was. It was some sort of a flowing. That water flowed through that meter. There is no mistake in the electronic billing. Looking at the readings, they're all linear, consistent. There is no technical issue with either the meter or the billing in this instance.
Alderwoman Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask Mr. Tech a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And it's okay if you take an exception to me, I still like you. What I do want to know is, from the report that you have, then, what is the highest that they've had? Is that a one-year report that you've got on their meter?
It looks like from August of 2017 to current is what I'm looking at.
And what are the numbers ranging at then? Have we had something as high as $1,000 then throughout that process of what you've got? We don't have that, but you've got it?
That really is irrelevant. It looks like they're anywhere from 11 to 30 to the highest was 148. There was another instance of a 96 reading. So
The 96 is now?
That was, look, back in May, it looks like.
So they had a usage 96 in May and paid $900?
No, this was, I believe, in, yeah, that was it. Mhm. That water flowed through that meter.
So that happened in May, it's happened in this billing cycle, the due date was, so that was also June, so was it May and June?
No, this was, this happened some time ago.
This is, I think, the reader that you're seeing, because this
Right.
is April 30th to May 29th. So the 96 was for this one that we have as an example. What are some of the other ones that we have then that are,
There were, it looks like last year in November, December, there was some high usage,
what were those usages?
111 and 148.
So it was considerably higher than this one.
Yes.
May I ask Mr. Bradsky a question?
You may.
So to follow up with that, David, because we've got what you paid the previous month, but as Mr. Tech had stated, you've had some high usages above the 96 usage on this one over the course of the last year. Any explanation on those?
Yeah, that was definitely, we had a tenant in the basement that moved out, and there was a broken water line down there. Now, that was a broken water line, that thing flowed, and it still, I don't think, was as high as this bill. But I paid that, and it was fixed, so that one's on me. This one, we did inspect the toilets, there's tenants in there every day, I checked with them all, there was no toilets running. You know, so for you to say that a mechanical process is infallible, we all know that's not true. So something happened, it's a hiccup. That's the only reason I'm here. I mean, it's $700. I mean, I could be at work right now, you know, earning part of that back. But to me, it's just more of a principle deal.
Have you checked to see what your next month's usage was after this one?
It was only $130.
So it went back
120.
down?
Yeah, they're all down. They're all $120, $130.
Except for the one that he was talking about that you knew about.
That I knew about, yes.
Any reason why you declined a $100 opportunity to see
I was
if there
never offered that.
Oh, you were?
No. I brought the gentleman in, and he watched the meter, and we watched it, it was spinning, and he said, okay, there's something on. So, okay, so we go upstairs, and the bathroom on the main floor where Mr. Wrench's office is, and lady comes out of the toilet. And so when it quit, the toilet quit running, we went back downstairs, checked it, and it stopped. You know, so that's telling him the meter's working. And I understand where he's coming from, I get it, but I think there was a hiccup. It's just as likely there was a problem with the meter, because we checked. You know, we did.
Had there been any unusual activity in the building, construction, remodeling,
No.
parties?
Yeah, no.
Searching for answers.
No, there's lawyers in there and an insurance guy, and that's it.
Thank you.
Lawyers don't party. Much.
Thank you very much, Alderwoman Modrick. No one else in the queue?
What's the motion? Or is there a motion?
We have no motion. Yep, there was one that died on the floor, but... Do you want me to recommend a motion? Okay.
I guess I can make a motion of the waiver.
Okay, second.
Okay, it's not really a waiver, it's a...
To approve number 22, then.
Okay, well, it is kind of, it's just a request to reduce, okay, well, it's really not an appeal either, but, deny the request, okay, there we go. All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Evans and a second from, what's your name? Oh, okay, anyway. No one else in the queue? If we have, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion passes, goes to council, and you can speak about it again next Tuesday night if you want, or you can just make the money. So, anyway, thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.